Welcome to Skagit Talks. I'm your host today, Gregory Sweet, and we've got a special show for you today. We're talking today with Brian Adams, who is the Director of Skagit County Parks and Recreation Department. Brian, welcome to Skagit Talks.
Thank you, Gregory. Good to be here.
It's good to have you. I have been looking forward to this week, knowing that you so graciously accepted my invitation to come on. And I want to talk to you a little bit about your mission that you have at Parks and Rec. Can you give us a little idea of that? Because I know you have a broad scale that you cover.
Well, as a unincorporated focus, in other words, cities will have their parks departments. We're often focused on those areas that are outside of city limits. But we also do regional parks within city limits. In other words, the softball fields or some of these other places where people come from all over to utilize our facilities. Those are sometimes in city limits. But yes, we do a lot of trail systems all over the county, unincorporated areas, campgrounds, really focus on trails. Just knowing that our comprehensive plan of what the public wants is trails, we are quite interested in doing all that we can to provide a better trail system for all.
And let's point out that you have a very comprehensive website that I enjoy very much. It's www.skagitcounty.net/parks and recreation. And once you go onto that site, there's a menu at the top that says Parks Directory. And if you click on that, a map will pull down showing all the Skagit County parks and campgrounds, and they are marked with stars. And then you can click on each one of these stars for a description of the park itself, what's there, directions, and that sort of thing. I think that's just wonderful.
Yeah. Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Brian Young, who is been with our IS department, and more specifically, the communications side of things. So Channel 21, which the county does a great job with, that's all Brian Young. He does advertisements for our county fair that's coming up, other things. So he's a great graphic designer, great web designer, and has done an incredible amount of great work for our department and others here at Skagit County.
That's wonderful. I wanted to talk with you, Brian, about some particular parks that I frequent on a regular basis. And one of them I've been out to a couple times in the last few weeks is Padilla Bay Shore Trail. And there's a great video on your website talking about it that it links to YouTube. But I noticed that to say that you're doing some extensive upgrades there for storm protection and improvements to the trail would be an understatement. What's your goal and your timetable to get that all done?
Well, now that we've gotten past the permitting phase, I think things go a lot quicker. And anytime you do an extensive project such as this, it involves federal, state, local permits. So that's always the limiting factor. But this is a partnership with the Dike District. So Dike District 12, who we have an interlocal agreement with, allows us to use that trail for recreation. Great partner. They had to do some work for protection and arboring and making sure that they're keeping the tide salts from getting into the farmlands, essentially. And we said, hey, while you're doing this project, this is a really good opportunity for us to make sure that the right product is put on those trails, an ADA accessible rock. And so we bought 11 truckloads. I don't know how many yards for sure. I'd have to look at the slips when they all come across my desk. But we bought all the material. They're going to put it in place. So when they're done doing all their armoring work and all their culvert and all their tide gate work, we're going to have this product laid on the trail. And not only is it going to be placed there, but it's going to be crowned in a way that the water rolls off it and it stays in good condition for a long period of time so that the recreationalists have a nice surface to be on, in whatever condition they're in.
That storm wall that I noticed that was on there with the rock, and that should help an awful lot from those storms in the winter that have oftentimes done some damage to that trail.
Right. Yep. This fall in particular. Yeah.
The other one, and by the way, I should mention too that is in Bayview, Washington, which is also near Bayview State Park, so you can double your journey when you go down to visit Padilla Bay Shore Trail. The second one that I wanted to talk with you about is another one that's really close to my heart, and that's the Northern State Recreation Area in Cedar Woolley. I know that the state deeded over 725 acres of that former Northern State Hospital in 1991 to the county, and the history there is just amazing, as the hospital and grounds were designed by the sons of architect Frederick Lowe Olmsted in a Spanish mission style. What's the status of what's going on there now?
Right. Yeah. Pretty incredible. Yes, we acquired the 700 and some odd acres, and the port and the state kept the property essentially on the west side of Hanson Creek, right? So we've got all that land, which was the farmland, working farm for all those patients that were at Northern State Hospital all those years. Daily, they got out, they were able to, work in orchards, dairy land, milk cows, whatever their role might have been out there. Those patients use the same trail systems now that recreationalists are using. Essentially, we're taking a lot of the old paths that the Olmsted brothers had a vision for and developed, and we're bringing them back to life. We're bringing the footbridges back to life. So now you can cross over the Hanson Creek. There's a great new trail system that the Skagit trail builders are building. They've taken some time off in the summer. They'll be back working in the fall. We've got another bridge to do out there and another bridge to permit. So just an incredible trail system out there. And boy, the popularity of that park has just gone crazy in the last few years. In other words, you might have seen just a few cars in the Helmick parking lot in the past. Now we've got a trailhead, a restroom, the Veterans Plaza, all these different amenities there. We've got a disc golf park. And that disc golf has a trail system on its own, right? You can get out there and use those trails. So an incredible trail system out there that's just really gaining popularity. And the way and the proximity to the Cascade Trail, you can get onto that trail system pretty easily.
It is such a beautiful area, and yet still remote in its own way, with the beauty that's there. And I wanted to ask you, do you have control at all over the beautiful Spanish mission style buildings that are there, or is that under a different jurisdiction?
Yeah, so that's the Port of Skagit. In the past, there was a different ownership out there. So in the past, we didn't have permission to get those bridges reestablished and for us to be able to cross over onto that other property.
I see.
It was a state division of government, and they were kind of hands off. Now, when the port took that property over, Skagit Port, they've got the port trails and some of that port property in different areas. When they took over, they had a whole different philosophy. They said, yes, people need to see this place, and people need to access the trails and be able to see all the old beautiful buildings that used to be off limits. So they've taken a whole new outlook there. They do have some precautions. There is reasons for them to want to keep folks on the path and not exploring and really approaching all the buildings, but to see them from the past that they've got established in those roads, they are happy to have the public in there. There is signage to kind of keep people in the places they want them to be, but for safety concerns and because Job Corps school is out there, they want to make sure that the recreationalists stay on those dedicated paths.
One of my favorite parks. It really is. It's just a wonderful benefit for Skagit Parks and Recreation. This is Skagit Talks, and we are talking to Brian Adams, the director of Skagit County Parks and Recreation. And Well, we're talking about Northern State. There's another park that I want that's basically right across the road from that is also one of my favorites called Cascade Trail, which is a 22.5-mile trail connecting Cedar Woolley to Concrete, part of a original. This is something I didn't know, and I've worked in right of way for over 40 years, especially on railroad rights of way doing fiber optic cable and that sort of thing. But I didn't realize that all of these had been rail banked, the term I had never heard before, by the Interstate Commerce Commission.
Yeah, rail bank property. The rail lines, when they decided to mothball their operations along this particular corridor, they allowed local agencies to acquire that land, and we got there. We have deeds for that property, quitclaim deeds, essentially, but we are able to acquire that land so that if a commerce or a reason came up in the future where those rail lines needed to be reutilized, they wouldn't have to go through an extensive process. And so we are stewards of that line. If and when there was ever a rail line system that went back in that location. But yes, it's a rail bank property, 22 and a half miles, farmlands, uplands, along the Skagit River, just a beautiful trail. We do struggle at times with floodwaters since it does interface so intimately with the creeks in the Skagit River. And we do have FEMA funding to take care of some of these areas, but it can take time. So we are working on that and the permitting and the design work so that the bridges and culverts that sometimes blow out can be replaced and put back where they should be. And not only that, we can do it in a way that makes it better than it was before. In other words, we hope that we don't have some of those same issues if we do it correctly.
Such a beautiful trail, especially the portion of it from Cedar Woolley to the other side of Hamilton is just absolutely gorgeous. The last trail that I had, I could talk with you for hours about Skagit Parks and Recreation, but I wanted to bring up a trail that until I got on your website, I had not heard of before, and I am very anxious to visit. And it's called Sharp Park, Montgomery Dubin Headlands Park in Anacortes, Washington.
Oh my God, that is one of my favorite places in the world. You can. It's not too far from Deception Pass. It's not too far from my home, actually. So that's one of the regular places that I go. It's where I met my wife 30 years ago. So, pretty incredible trail system out there. It interface, the views out there from Sarah's Bluff are just really incredible. Porpoise Point, another trail, there's the Porpoise Point Trail. If you get out there, you'll see porpoises 50% of the time that you go out there. So that's on the north end. It's a little more technical, a little more difficult, but the trail that we've done a lot of work with the Washington Trails Association is the primary trail that brings you up to the bluff. And with all that work, no matter what age or what kind of ability you have, you can find a way up there. And it's just got the most expansive, beautiful views that you'd want to see. It goes along a palustrine wetland, kind of a wetland that used to be open and open water, but slowly over the years, the cattails and whatever else are coming up. So you don't see a lot of water, but it's kind of an ecosystem changing over time, it's just an incredible park to be in and see, and it leads to fabulous views. So one of my favorite places, and not too far from the Tercey Trail. So if you're at the Sharp Park, visit the Tercey Trail because it's got some views of the old Morris Graves cabin. He was an artist that lived on South Hidalgo and other things. And that took us a long while to get that, trail and buy all the easements and get everything that was needed to put that into place. Connects to that.
I can't wait.
Very good.
I just can't wait. I had no idea. And there's a wonderful article on your website about the donors that gave that land to create a park from it. Let's point out again, too, that the website for Parks and Recreation is skagitcounty.net/ Parks and Recreation. The phone number is area code 360-416-1350, and the website is parksrec at co.skagit.wa.us. Brian, thank you so very much for joining us. And as our producer pointed out beforehand, I'd love to have you come back and talk with us again sometime.
We can talk about trails as long as you're willing to, Gregory. I love talking trails, and I love talking recreation and public use. Thank you.
This has been Gregory Sweet with Skagit Talks.